There is a book of prayers in your house. It sits on a shelf, or in a drawer beside the bed, and one corner of it is worn soft where your hand has held it. I am not going to tell you to throw it away. I am going to tell you one thing about it that will either change the rest of your life or make you angry with me before this hour is out. And I would rather have your anger than leave you where you are standing. The words printed in that book are not the message. They never were. The message is the condition of the man who is holding it, and that condition is the thing which goes out, and that condition is the thing which is answered. This was set down plainly by men who used it, and it did not travel far, because it does not console anybody. It puts the whole account back into your hands on the very page where you were hoping to set it down. The crowd disposes of this in a single sentence. I know the sentence. I have heard it in parlors and in boardrooms, and from men in pulpits, and I will give it to you before we are finished, along with the reason it settles nothing. Sit forward. This will be plain. What follows was not written to comfort you. Let me set my terms at the start, so that you know exactly what I am saying and exactly what I am not saying, and so that if you decide to be offended, you are at least offended by the right thing. I am not saying there is nothing at the other end. I hold the opposite. I hold that there is an intelligence back of this universe, that it is available to every man alive, and that no man is required to go through another man to reach it. That is not the offensive part of this hour. That is the part everyone agrees with. I am not attacking any man's church, and I am not attacking the practice itself. A man who kneels is doing something better than a man who does not, even when he does it badly. Here is the offensive part. What you have been sending has not been what you thought you were sending. You have believed that the words were the errand. The words are the wrapping. What travels is your condition while you speak them, and if that condition is fear, then fear is what you have posted, and fear is what has been acted upon, and you have been getting exactly what you asked for. Read that again in your own mind and see whether it makes you comfortable. It does not make me comfortable, and I have lived with it for years. Because the moment you accept it, a great many familiar explanations stop working. You cannot say that the answer was withheld. You cannot say that you were passed over, or that the arrangement is unfair, or that other men are favored. You are left holding a very small and very heavy fact, which is that the instrument was in your hands the whole time, and nobody ever showed you how to hold it. Most men will not carry that. They will put it down and go looking for a teacher who tells them the fault is elsewhere, and there is always such a teacher, and he is always well attended. I am not that teacher. What I have to hand you is the mechanism, plainly, in the order in which it works, and what you do with it afterwards is entirely your affair. The order in which you have been asking. Begin with something you can check without leaving your chair. Think of the last matter in your life that mattered enough to frighten you. A note falling due. A place of work that was thinning out. A doctor who wanted to see you again the following week. Something with weight. Now put the sequence of that fortnight in order, honestly, and do not improve it as you go. You made a plan. When the plan showed a hole in it, you spoke to somebody who might help. When that came to nothing, you went over the figures again at the kitchen table, twice, in case they had changed. You asked a brother or a friend who had money. You put off the letter. You lay awake and rehearsed sentences. And then, somewhere near the end of it, at an hour when nothing further could be done and the house was quiet, you sat on the edge of the bed and you asked. Last. You went last. I am not scolding you for it. I want you to look at what the order means, because the order is the most honest statement about your beliefs that you have ever made. You did not say it aloud. You did not write it anywhere. You simply arranged your effort, and the arrangement gave you away. If a man told you plainly that he regarded this as the least promising thing available to him, you would say he had no faith at all. Yet that is precisely the ranking your own fortnight recorded, and you would have denied it under oath, because you did not know you had made it. And now observe the condition a man is in by the time he arrives at the end of such an order. He is spent. He has failed at 4 things. He has been awake since 3. He does not come as a man who expects. He comes as a man who has run out. Every ounce of what he carries into that quiet minute is dread. So he sends dread. And then, some weeks later, When the thing he dreaded arrives, he takes it as evidence that nothing was listening. It was listening. That is the difficulty. What is received at the other end of it? Now I will state the mechanism, and I will state it as carefully as I know how, because I have no wish to claim more than I can stand behind. Here is what I hold, and I hold it as a working understanding, rather than as a thing proved in a laboratory. Your own mind is the instrument through which any such request is carried. It does not carry your vocabulary. It carries the emotion the vocabulary is soaked in. Feeling is the freight. Words are the crate. Whatever emotion dominates you at the moment of asking is the thing which is presented, and the thing which is presented is the thing which is acted upon. If you ask for relief while you are full of fear that it will not come, then the fear is your actual petition, and the words on top of it are of no consequence whatever. Now I will not ask you to take this from me, because a man ought not to take a thing like this from anybody. I will ask you to test it against your own record, which you carry with you and which nobody can edit. Go back to a time when you asked for something, and it came. Not a small thing. Something that mattered, and that arrived. Now stop working on the outcome, and go and stand inside your own state of mind at the moment you asked for it. Do it slowly. I will wait. Most men, when they do this honestly, find the same thing, and it startles them. They were not straining. They were not bargaining. They had, for whatever reason, and often, for no reason they can name, a settled quietness about it. They asked the way a man asks his own father for a thing he already knows the answer to. And then go and stand inside the state of mind of a request that came to nothing. You will find effort there. You will find a man leaning on the words, saying them harder, saying them again, watching himself say them, to see whether he means them yet. That is the whole of it. The difference was never in the wording, and it was never in the deserving. It was in the condition of the man at the moment of the sending, and the condition of a man is not a mystery. It is a thing that can be governed. That is what the rest of this hour is about. Why the words themselves are not the message. I want to take one more swing at the words, because the belief in them is old, and it is stubborn, and a great deal of money has been made out of it. You may buy books of prayers, and you may repeat what is printed in them until the day of your doom, and if there is nothing under the words, then nothing is what you have sent. A vehicle carries what is put into it. An empty one arrives empty, however finely it is made and however many times you send it out. I want to be exact here, because this is the point at which men mishear me. I am not saying the old words are worthless. Some of them are the finest sentences in the language, and they have carried more feeling than anything a man is likely to compose on his own at 4 a.m. A good form can raise a man's condition, and when it does, it has done its whole work. What I am saying is that it is the raising that travels, and not the form. The form is a ladder. Nobody at the top of a ladder is carrying the ladder. And here is the test that settles it, which any honest man can run on himself in a week. Say the finest of those sentences twice a day for 6 days, while your mind is somewhere else, on the price of feed, or on a man at work who slighted you. Then, on the 7th day, say something clumsy of your own making, in your own words, at a moment when you actually mean it all the way down. You will know which of the 7 was different. You will not need me to tell you. The reason is not complicated. The deeper part of your mind, the part which does this carrying, is not impressed by grammar, and it does not keep a record of your attendance. It takes an impression the way soft ground takes a footprint, and it takes it from the weight standing on it, not from the shape of the shoe. So a man may be word perfect for 40 years, and never once have stood on the ground with his whole weight. And another may be clumsy and ungrammatical, and quite unable to explain himself, and leave a print 6 inches deep. I have set this down before, and I will set it down again, because it is the plainest thing in the philosophy, and it is the thing most reliably ignored. There are no toll gates, and there is no proxy. Now we come to the part where I lose some of you, and I have made my peace with that. There are no toll gates between your mind and that intelligence, not one. The communication costs nothing that can be counted in dollars. It costs patience and faith and persistence and understanding and a sincere wish to communicate, and those 5 are the entire fare, and no man alive can pay them on your behalf. Paid prayers are worthless. That intelligence does no business by proxy. You go direct, or you do not communicate at all. Now let me say immediately what I am not saying, because a careless listener will run off with the wrong half of it. I am not telling you to leave your congregation. A body of people who gather in one place with one purpose is one of the strongest arrangements known to men, and I would not take it from anybody. Nor am I attacking any man who has given his life to the care of souls. Many of them are as fine as any men living, and a number of them understand this better than I do. What I am saying is narrow, and it is hard. Nobody can make the approach for you. Not for a fee, not for a donation, not out of kindness, not out of love. Another man may stand beside you while you do it, and that is worth a great deal. He cannot do the thing itself, any more than he can eat your dinner and leave you fed. And I know why men wish it were otherwise, because I have wished it myself. To pay is easy. To give is easy. Both can be done in an afternoon by a man in any condition whatever, and both leave you feeling that something has been transacted. The 5 items on that list cannot be transacted. Patience cannot be bought in an afternoon. Persistence is a thing you only ever have evidence of afterwards. Understanding will not be hurried by money at any price. And a sincere wish to communicate is the one item on the list that a man cannot fake even to himself, which is why it is on the list. So there is nothing to buy here. There is no arrangement to enter into. There is a thing to become, and the becoming is yours, and it starts tonight, or it does not start. That is the offense. I told you it was coming. The sentence. The crowd will use to dismiss this. I promised you the sentence. Here it is. That is nothing but making yourself believe a thing. You will hear it in exactly that shape, or in one of its cousins. It is said quickly, in a level tone, with a small movement of the shoulders, and it is meant to close the subject rather than to open it. And it works, because it sounds like the sober position, and because the man saying it appears to be the one who is not fooling himself. I want you to look at it properly, because it is the most useful objection anybody has ever made to me. Granted entirely. Suppose the whole of it is nothing but a man altering his own state of mind. Suppose there is no intelligence, no carrying, nothing beyond the walls of his own skull. Then what has the objector just conceded? He has conceded that a man's state of mind can be altered by his own act. He has conceded that the alteration is real enough to be worth sneering at, and he has conceded that the men who do it come out differently from the men who do not, because otherwise there would be nothing there to dismiss. That is my entire case. I asked for exactly that and no more. The objection hands it over on the way past, and then walks off believing it has taken something away from me. Press it one step further, and it comes apart in the hand. If a man may make himself believe a thing, then he is already doing so, every hour, in one direction or the other. Nobody is neutral. The man who says it is all self-persuasion has just told you that he too is persuaded of something, and he did not choose it deliberately, so it was chosen for him by whatever has had the run of his mind since he was a boy. So the question was never whether a man arranges his own conviction. He does. The only question ever on the table is whether he does it on purpose or by accident, and whether the thing he arranges is worth having. I have no quarrel with a skeptic. A good one keeps a man honest, and there are good ones. My quarrel is with a sentence that pretends to be an argument and is only a shrug with words on it. You either control your mind, or it controls you. Now let me name the principle this hour has been walking towards, and it is not the one you expected from the subject. It is self-discipline, mastery over self. Mind control is the result of self-discipline and habit. You either control your mind, or it controls you. There is no halfway compromise, and there never has been. That is the sentence I would have carved over the door of every school in this country if anybody had asked me, and nobody did. Consider the man who put this country on wheels. He had little schooling, he had no money to begin with, and no influential friends, and his own record shows him wrong about a good many things, and stubborn about most of them. Set him beside the 100,000 men who worked in his plants, and look for the difference. It is not intelligence. There were sharper men on his own factory floor, and he would have said so himself. The difference is that he had a mind, and he controlled it. and the greater part of them had minds which they did not attempt to control. Their minds were run for them by the newspaper, by the last man who spoke to them, by whatever mood the morning arrived in. His was pointed at one thing and held there, and would not be argued off it by the whole of the engineering profession. That is the entire distance between those two conditions of life. Not luck, not schooling, not the year a man was born or the county he was born in, the governing of a mind, which is free, and available to every one of those 100,000 men, and taken up by almost none of them. And now put that beside everything I have told you this hour, and see what it does. If what is sent is your condition, and your condition is the product of what you have permitted your mind to hold, then the whole business of asking rests on the one faculty most men have never once deliberately exercised. You have been trying to compose a letter in a language you never learned. The discipline is not of the hour, but of the interval. Here is where nearly every man goes wrong, and he goes wrong in a way that looks like diligence, which is why it is so hard to catch. Having understood that his condition is what travels, he resolves to improve his condition. And he resolves to improve it at the moment of asking. He will compose himself, he will settle his mind first, and steady his breathing, and get himself into the proper state, and then he will ask. He tries it. It works badly, or it works for a minute and then slides. He concludes that he is not a spiritual man, or that he lacks something other men were given, and he goes back to reciting words with his mind 3 streets away. What he has attempted is impossible, and nobody told him so. You cannot compose a mind for 1 minute that you have not governed for the other 1439. The state you arrive in is not chosen on arrival. It is the residue of the day, and of the day before it, and of the 7 years before that. A man who has spent 11 hours in a low, wearing worry, cannot set the worry down at 10 o'clock, because he has knelt. He may quiet the surface of it. Underneath, the whole of the day is still standing there, and it is the whole of the day which is sent. So the work is not in the asking. Let me put that as plainly as I can, because it overturns the way you have been going at this. The asking is the last 2 minutes of a long day, and it reports the day. It does not correct it. The work is in the interval, in the hours between, in what you permit your mind to hold on a Tuesday afternoon, when nothing in particular is happening, and no one is watching, and it does not feel like the important part. That is the unglamorous truth of this, and it is why the material does not sell. Nobody wants an instruction about Tuesday afternoon. They want a form of words to say at the moment of crisis, and there is no such form, and the men who promise one are selling ladders to people who have nowhere to lean them. Govern the interval, and the moment takes care of itself. You will arrive already in the condition, because you will have been living in it, and you will not have to manufacture in 2 minutes what a man is supposed to carry all day. The third appetite, and what it costs you every day. If the work is in the interval, then the question is what governs a man during it, and the answer, unhappily for our vanity, is his appetites. There are 3 which do most of the damage: the table, the body, and the tongue. The first 2 have been preached at for 2,000 years, and I have nothing to add to that sermon this evening. It is the third that concerns us, and it is the one no one names, and it is the one costing you the most. The third appetite is the desire to express loosely organized opinions. Watch yourself for 1 day and count. The verdict you gave on a man you have met twice. The opinion you offered on a business you have never been inside. The judgment on a nation you could not draw. The thing you said about your brother's wife with the certainty of a man reading from a document, and each one delivered at speed, warmly, with no examination whatever, because it felt good in the mouth. Now I have no interest in whether you were right. Some of it will have been right, by accident, in the way a stopped clock is right. That is not the cost. The cost is what the habit does to the instrument. A mind permitted to render verdicts all day without weighing them is being trained, hour upon hour, to conclude without examining. It is being taught that speaking and knowing are the same act, and you are the one training it. Then, at 10 o'clock at night, having drilled that mind for 11 hours in speaking without weight, you ask it to become still and definite, and to hold one thing with your entire conviction for 2 minutes. It cannot. You have spent the day teaching it the opposite, and it learned what you taught. Here is the practice, and it is small, and you will find it far harder than it sounds. Tomorrow, hold one opinion back. One, not from cowardice, and not to seem wise. Choose a moment when the sentence is fully loaded and the room is waiting, and it would be pleasant to fire it, and simply do not. Watch what happens inside you when you do that. There will be a pressure, and something that feels like a small loss, and then, a moment later, something quieter that you have not felt in a long time. That quiet thing is the faculty you have been missing. It is not devotion, it is self-discipline, and it is available to any man on any afternoon, and it costs nothing but the pleasure of saying the sentence. What faith is not, and why the mistake is expensive. I have used the word faith several times this hour, and I have let it stand, and now I must go back and clean it, because in ordinary talk, it has been worn down until it means almost nothing, and a worn word will fail you at the exact moment you need it to bear weight. Faith is not hoping. Hoping is a wish with the outcome left open, and a man who hopes has already made room for the thing not to come. There is nothing wrong with hope. It is simply a different article, and it will not do this work. Faith is not optimism. Optimism is a temperament, and largely an inheritance, and a cheerful man is not thereby a man of faith. I have sat with cheerful men who were in terror underneath, and with somber, dry men who were entirely without fear. Faith is not the intensity of your wanting. This is the commonest error of all, and it is why so much effort produces so little. A man believes that if he wants a thing hard enough, and says so hard enough, and works himself up sufficiently, the wanting will carry it. The wanting is not the carrier. Violent wanting is very often fear wearing a coat, and fear is what gets sent. Faith is not the absence of doubt in the way most men mean it, either. A man may have doubts in the front of his mind, and argue with them, and be perfectly sound underneath. Here is what it is, as near as I can put it. Faith is a settled state in which a thing is treated as done, not shouted about, not defended, treated. The way you treat the fact that the sun will come up, which you do not affirm, and do not argue for, and would not raise your voice about, and which entirely governs how you make your plans for the morning. You can tell the difference by the behavior, which never lies. A man who hopes for a thing keeps checking. A man who has faith in a thing acts on the far side of it, and makes arrangements that only make sense if it has already happened, and is not agitated, and does not require anybody to agree with him about it. That is why the man in your memory, the one who asked quietly and received, could not tell you afterwards what he had done. He had not done anything. He had simply been in a condition, and out of that condition he asked, and the asking was almost incidental. The expensive part of the mistake is this. Men who have confused faith with the intensity of wanting conclude, after years of straining, that the thing does not work. It works. They were pulling the wrong lever with tremendous force. The single negative that spoils the whole errand. I must now tell you a hard thing about the standard, because a great many men do 9/10 of this and then wonder why nothing moved. The presence of a single negative in the conscious mind is enough to spoil the whole errand. Not a majority of negatives. 1. It is not a matter of weighing your good thoughts against your bad ones and going with the balance. That deeper part of your mind is not an accountant, and it does not strike an average. It takes what is dominant, and it takes it whole. I know how this sounds. It sounds like a standard no man alive could meet, and if it meant what men take it to mean, it would be. So let me say what it does not mean, because more people have been discouraged by a wrong reading of this than by any other line in the philosophy. It does not mean you must never have a low hour. It does not mean a stray fear crossing your mind at 4 in the morning has undone everything. It does not mean you are to police yourself into exhaustion, watching every thought for contraband, which is itself a form of fear, and produces exactly what it is trying to prevent. What it means is that, at the moment of the sending, the dominant thing must be the one thing. And dominance is not achieved by weeding. You will never empty a mind by attacking what is in it, any more than you clear a field by pulling at weeds all summer with nothing planted. You crowd it. You form the habit of applying and using the constructive emotions until they occupy the ground so thoroughly that the others cannot get a footing. That is the whole method, and it is a matter of habit rather than of effort. And, notice, because this is the point of the unit, that the habit is formed during the interval. Not at the moment. The man who has spent his Tuesday afternoons deliberately occupying his mind with what he intends, rather than with what he dreads, arrives at 10 o'clock with the ground already held. He does not have to fight anything off. There is nothing there to fight. Faith and fear will not be held at once. There is a plain reason why all of this comes down to one thing, and I want to state it before we go on. Faith and fear make poor bedfellows. Where the one is found, the other cannot be. They are not two items which may be carried together in different hands. They are two conditions of the same man, and a man is only ever in one condition at a time. You can test this on yourself in about 4 seconds, which is why I like it. Bring up something you are genuinely afraid of. Hold it properly. Do not glance at it. Hold it the way you hold it at 3 in the morning. Now, without letting go of it, be entirely certain about something else. You cannot. Nobody can. The certainty goes thin the moment the fear is properly held, and the fear goes quiet the moment the certainty is properly held, and there is no arrangement in which you have both at full strength. This is not a moral rule. It is a fact about how a man is built, and it is the most useful fact in this hour, because it converts an enormous vague spiritual project into a single practical question. The question is not, how do I get more faith? That question has no handle on it. Men have chased it their whole lives and got nowhere, because it is like asking how to be taller. The question is, what am I afraid of, and will I go and deal with that? Because the faith is not something you have to import. It is what is left when the fear is not occupying the man. It is the resting condition. You do not manufacture it. You stop preventing it. And that is a question with a handle. What am I afraid of? Name it, in a plain sentence, in words a child could follow. Not, things are difficult. The actual thing, that the money will not come by the 15th, that the doctor will say the word, that you will end your life having been ordinary. Most men have never once written that sentence down, and carry the fear as a fog rather than as a fact, and a fog cannot be dealt with. A fact can. 9/10 of what men call a want of faith is simply a fear that has never been looked at directly, and which has therefore never had to survive being looked at. A great many of them do not survive it. A young man in a hall in West Virginia. Let me put a case in front of you, because I have been arguing for a long while now, and an argument is a poor substitute for a thing that happened. Some years ago I was asked to speak to the young men and women of a small college in West Virginia. It was a plain hall in a plain town, and there were perhaps 100 and some of them there, in the good clothes their families had put them in, at the end of their schooling, and at the beginning of nothing in particular. The country was not generous to young men that year. I said what I have spent my life saying. I was not eloquent. Afterwards, the local paper printed it, which is how I know I did not imagine the occasion, and the town went back to its business. Every one of those young people heard the same words on the same afternoon, in the same room. Identical delivery, identical air, identical hour. If ideas worked the way people suppose they work, 100 lives would have turned that day. One did. There was a young man in that hall named Jennings Randolph. He took one idea out of what I said, and he did not admire it, and he did not tell his friends afterwards that it had been a fine address. He appropriated it. He took it away as his own property, and made it a part of the way he intended to live, and then, which is the entire matter, he kept hold of it through the years, in which nothing whatever appeared to come of it. He sits now in the Congress of the United States. Now, I want to be careful with this, because it would be very easy to tell it as a flattering story about a speech, and it is not one. The address did not make him. 99 other people got the same address, and it made nothing at all. The difference was not in what was given, it was in what was taken, and the taking is a private act performed by one person, in a hall full of people who are all being given the same thing. And I put it to you that you have been in that hall, more than once. You have heard the thing that would have done it, and you found it very good, and you agreed with it warmly, and you went home, and the agreement was the end of it. That is the offense I have been walking towards for the last half hour. It is not that you have not been told. You have been told repeatedly. You have been sitting in the hall for years, nodding. When the thing asked for does not come, I am going to stop here and answer the objection that some of you have been holding since the third unit, because if I walk past it, you will be quite right to distrust everything else. You are saying, I have done this. Not badly, and not in a panic. There was a season in my life when I was as quiet and as settled about a thing as any man could be, and I asked, and it did not come. I believe you, and I am not going to explain it away, because the explanations men offer for this are mostly cowardly, and you would see through them inside a minute. So let me be exact about what I claim and what I do not. First, the answer very often arrives in a form men do not recognize as an answer. You asked for a sum of money, and what came, 3 weeks later, was an idea, a plan. A perfectly ordinary notion about how the thing might be done, arriving while you were shaving. And you did not count it, because you were watching the door for a check, and this came from the wrong direction, and required a year of work. I would say that is the commonest shape of the whole business. The answer is a plan, and a plan looks so much like your own thinking that you take the credit for it, and then complain that nothing was sent. Second, some things arrive late, and a man who has stopped looking will not see them land. This is less consoling than it sounds, and I offer it plainly rather than warmly. And third, which I will not dress up, sometimes a man asks well, and the thing does not come. There are men, as settled in themselves as any man could be, who have asked for a wife's health and buried her. Any teacher who tells you such a case has never crossed his path, is either very young or he is lying to you, and in either case, do not give him your evenings. I will not hand you the dodge that every one of those was secretly for the best. Some of it is simply hard, and it is not made less hard by being explained, and a philosophy that cannot say so is a comfort and not a philosophy. Here is what I claim, and it is narrower than what has been sold to you under this heading, and it has the advantage of being true. The condition a man is in governs what goes out from him. That is the mechanism, and it holds. A man who governs that condition is a different instrument from a man who does not, and over a life the difference between those two men is enormous, and quite visible to anybody watching. He is not thereby exempted from life. He was never promised that. Nothing in this hour was ever a promise that the world would be arranged around his convenience. And if that is what you came for, I have wasted your evening and you have my apologies. What he is given is this. He is no longer adding his own fear to whatever is already against him. That alone, over 30 years, is the difference between two lives, and it is quite enough to be going on with. Why this was never meant to reach you. You may have wondered, since I claimed at the outset that this did not travel far, why a thing so plain should have stayed so quiet. It is worth a few minutes, because the reason is not a conspiracy, and it is more interesting than one. Nobody suppressed this. There is no locked cabinet. It stayed quiet for 3 reasons, and every one of them is ordinary. The first is that it cannot be sold. There is no article to hand over. A man who understood the whole of this could open premises tomorrow and would have nothing on his shelves, and the 5 things it actually costs are all of them unpurchasable. A teaching that cannot be sold has nobody to carry it, and a teaching with nobody to carry it stays where it is. The second is that it cannot be delegated, and almost everything men value about their arrangements is the part somebody else does for them. Take away the proxy, and you have taken away the comfort. Most people, offered the choice between a thing that works and requires them, and a thing that does not work and does not, will take the second and be perfectly sincere about it. The third is the one that keeps it quiet most effectively. It offends the very man it would help, and it offends him at his best moment, when he is doing the thing he considers most decent. He is on the edge of the bed, at the end of a bad fortnight, doing what he was taught as a boy, and the material walks in and tells him that the way he is doing it is the reason it has not answered. No man takes that gladly. I did not take it gladly, and it cost me a good many years to stop arguing with it. So it is not that the philosophy was hidden, it is that it was declined, over and over, politely, by people who liked it very much in the abstract, which is a far more effective form of suppression, than any lock. And that is why you were told, at the start of this hour, that you would either be changed by it or angered by it. There is no third door. The material does not permit a man to remain interested in it. What a man does who has nothing left to blame. Now let us have the reckoning, since I promised it and since you have stayed this long. If what I have set out is sound, then every external cause you have been carrying comes off the table at once. Not because your difficulties were imaginary. They were not, and I have no wish to insult a man's troubles, having had a full share of my own. They come off the table because not one of them touches the faculty this hour has been about. Your creditors do not govern what your mind holds on Tuesday. The men who passed you over did not choose the condition you carry into that quiet minute. The family you were born into gave you a great deal, and some of it was heavy, and it did not take from you the power to govern your own attention. That power was never once removed. It was simply never taken up. I know what this costs to hear. A man's explanations are not a luxury. They are load-bearing. He built the house on them, and when they come out, the house shifts, and everything in it that was standing straight is suddenly at an angle. So let me tell you what is on the other side of it, since men who tell you the hard half and stop have always struck me as unserious. On the other side is the only piece of good news in this hour, and it is very large. If nothing external has been holding the instrument, then nothing external has to move first. You are not waiting on a market, or on a man's decision, or on your health, or on a change of luck in a family that has not had much. You are waiting on a habit of mind that is entirely inside your own house. That is the trade this material offers, and it is an honest one, and it is the whole of it. You give up the comfort of the explanation. You receive the ability to begin tonight without anybody's permission. Most men, offered that trade in plain words, refuse it. They will tell you they accept it, and they mean the telling sincerely, and then they go on living inside the explanation, because the explanation is warm, and the alternative asks something of them on a Tuesday afternoon when nobody is watching. You are not obliged to be most men. You have never been obliged to be most men. That is the point at which the whole thing turns, and it turns tonight or it does not. What you will do tonight before you ask for anything. I will not send you away with an inspiration. An inspiration is a fine feeling that has worn off by Thursday. Here is what to do, in order, and it is small enough that you have no excuse. Tonight, before you ask for anything, do not ask. Sit still first, and take an honest reading of your own condition, the way a man takes his own temperature and does not argue with the glass. If what you find there is fear, then do not proceed to the asking. You would only be posting the fear, which is what you have been doing for years, and one more night of it will not help you. Instead, take the second step, which is to name the fear in one plain sentence and set it down in your own hand. The actual fear, in the words you would use to a friend, rather than the words you use to yourself. You will find, more often than not, that the sentence is smaller on paper than it was in the dark, and that a good part of it dissolves in the act of being written at all. Then the third step, and this is the one that does the work over time. Take a quarter of an hour tomorrow, in the middle of an ordinary afternoon when nothing is at stake, and give it deliberately to the condition you intend to live in. Not to asking for anything, to occupying the ground. Hold what you intend, and hold it as a settled matter rather than as a longing, until the 15 minutes are gone. Do that on the ordinary days. That is the interval, and the interval is the whole discipline, and the man who governs it arrives at every important moment already in the condition, with nothing to manufacture. And the fourth, which is one line, and which will govern the rest. Hold one opinion back each day. It seems unrelated, and it is not. Every time you decline to render a verdict you have not earned, you are teaching that instrument that speaking and knowing are two different acts, and it is that lesson, more than any other, which makes a mind capable of holding one thing with conviction when it matters. That is all of it. There is nothing further, and there is nothing to send for, and there is nobody to apply to. Do it for 90 days before you form any opinion of it. There will be a fortnight in the middle when nothing whatever appears to be happening, and that fortnight is not a sign that it has failed. It is what the ground looks like before anything comes up through it. And on the night you notice that you have asked for something without straining and without checking, and without the old tightness in the chest, you will understand what I have been trying to hand you for the whole of this hour, and you will know that nobody could have handed it to you but yourself.